the new issue is gonna, go about how contemporary mythologies influences our society today. And I think, yeah, I mean, I think we all do sort of see how your work kind of fit in this whole idea. And one of the best ways, of course, is to get to know the artist behind the art, of course. So, yeah, I just wanted to first of all mention that I was very, very impressed with your pictures, and that I was actually very much like very moved, and they reminded me, or some of them reminded me of poetry, which is something I'm a huge fan about, and that's why I wanted to start this conversation from a poem from Audre Lorde, which I think, I mean, she wrote a lot about, female bodies and women, and all the whole relationship in this sort of trio. So I don't know if you had a chance to like go through the questions, um, because like the poem it's written in the document. Otherwise, I can reread it for you. It's not a problem at all.
Could you reread it for me?
Yeah, sure. So the poem it's called Woman, and it goes, I dream of a place between your breasts to build my house like a heaven, where I plant corpse in your body, an endless harvest where the commonest rock in moonstone and ebony opal, giving milk to all of my hungers, and your night comes down upon me like a nurturing rain. So this is the poem that Audre Lorde wrote, to sort of like unravel the whole relationship between women and womanhood and bodies, of course. And she was a black queer poet, so she really emphasized on this whole dynamics, and it's something that um, yeah, I noticed also in your picture. That's why I made this connection. And if you don't mind, we can start with the questions. Yeah. The first question is, so Audre Lorde in her poem describes the black woman body as an endless harvest. For centuries, the black female body has been a symbol of care, not just to her own, but also on a larger scope. How does such an idea impact the way you interact with your body and the one of your subjects?
Could you repeat the last sentence of your question?
How does such an idea, meaning the idea of the black woman body being an endless harvest or a symbol of care, um, so how this idea impacts the way you interact with your body and the one of your subjects?
Hmm. Hmm. Sorry, I was giving myself a chance to think a second.
Yeah, of
But
course.
and also my son is doing the most, so I apologize in
No, it's
advance.
completely fine.
But I think to answer that question, I have to peer further into why it is that I gravitate towards photographing Black women in the first place, photographing nudes in the first place. And I think part of it was mainly coming of age and coming fully into, I guess, recognizing my queerness, especially as a person who lives in the American South. Um, I think that is a major influence, and it's just part of the reason why, again, I photograph Black women and photograph nudes in the first place. I think it's not only an expression of care and not necessarily attraction to my sitters, but also sort of, I don't know, just a way of expressing sexuality myself in a way that I couldn't when I was younger. My to just give you further background, I live like below the Bible Belt, and my
Mm.
entire family is somehow connected to the church. My grandfather was a pastor. My father is a theologian, and he is on the more liberal side of things, but more so within my family, there was a great deal of homophobia. So I think now that I'm older and I have more control over my life and I know exactly the things that I want, and I don't know, I think I just have more room to play, more room to be honest in my work about who it is that I'm attracted to, what it is that I find beautiful, and almost like what, just like in the poem that you read, it almost feels like a form of worship in a way.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, I kind of, I didn't want to assume, but I sort of like picture that because it's something that um realized for myself. I lived when I was in, I lived in the States when I was younger, but I didn't like live there through uh my teen years, which is probably the years more significant for someone, where you discover yourself and everything in relations to that, which can also be sexuality. And um I also sort of had the phase in my early, yeah, when I was 14, 15, sort of realizing what I liked and who I liked, everything, in connection to the way I looked and the way I was perceived by society. So I understand I don't want to say I understand where you come from because, again, really, I understand why you see what you see on black female bodies and especially on naked bodies. So yeah, also because black female bodies, especially when we are younger and we are also, you know, sort of like projecting or trying to understand things through our mother's bodies or aunts or stuff. So it's a very complex dynamic, and
Mm-hmm.
also to put it into a picture. So that really is something interesting to know. So yeah, in is there a particular aspect of the female body that you want to highlight in your pics, and if yes, which one?
Hmm. I think not necessarily. I was talking to one of my friends, and she's a black trans woman, but I always tell her that she's literally the most sexiest person that I know. And it's not necessarily from her body that where that, I guess, like sexual aura comes from, but even though she's a very voluptuous woman, but it's more so from her energy, her confidence, the way in which she navigates the world fully as herself and leads with forwardly with that sexuality. Um, I just think that is what I find, or what I try to find in my sitters, especially within these nudes. That's what I think gravitates towards, makes me gravitate towards them the most. I I sometimes even take self-portraits, and I mean, I think I'm also trying to get out of, I guess, the idea that a self-portrait is one that has to be beautiful. I think in the age of the selfie and having more access and the ability to take self-portraits on a wide scale, and we don't think of them as self-portraits, we think of them as something that we have to look pretty in. That was what was holding me back for a bit.
Mm-hmm.
But now when I take a self portrait, I think I'm aiming to embody that, I guess, wholeness, that rawness and honesty, but also a bit of tap in to a bit of my sexual being as well, which is something that I felt for so long that I had to suppress. Um, whether that be just in the environment that I was raised in, or I guess in a romantic sense as well, especially when you're young and you're coming into your body and you're realizing who you like and could potentially love. Um, so I think those are the things that are kind of swirling around in my head as I'm looking and figuring out what it is that I'm looking to get out of making a picture.
So it's not one singular thing, it's mostly connected to energy. So it
Hmm.
doesn't have a specific physical connotation. It's something that you um, feel when you are in front of someone. Let's
Hmm.
put it that way. So it could be my nose if you were in front of me. It could be someone's elbow if so it gravitates like around the energy that the person puts in the world, basically.
I think that's definitely it. I think, especially when it comes to feminine energy, I think that there's just something that's so gorgeous and appealing about it, especially with someone that leads forwardly.
Hmm.
Um, in every room and every place, that is who they are and that's what they want to lead with. And I
Yeah.
think it's also something that could be tapped into in private, whether you're, with your lover or with, someone in their studio like myself. But I think those are the things that I'm looking for.
What do you aim for when shooting naked bodies?
Mm, Okay. What do I aim for when shooting naked bodies? I think more so capturing all walks of life, um, mainly women and Black women that you would never expect to be photographed nude. I think that Black women have an interesting relationship with nudity, sexuality as a whole. And it's something that we grapple with, especially the ownership of it. I think as an artist, it's something that I grapple with more so because I'm an artist that sells work. And so I don't like the idea of just anybody having ownership of the photographs that I've taken of these Black women. So I think that's more so who it is that I'm just most interested in capturing and what my goal is when I'm photographing them.
Yeah. Okay. That was a really well motivated answer.
Mhm.
Um, but like this is just out of curiosity. Uh, do you publish your work on your socials?
Sometimes I've been like not doing it as much, not nearly as much as I used to. But I
Mm-hmm.
think I'm more so just trying to figure out other methods of sharing work, especially other methods of sharing work that's deeply personal or not made for um another, you know, entity like a editorial or anything, which is why I really appreciate experiences like this that aren't necessarily geared towards just aren't necessarily geared towards, I don't know, making someone look, the goal being some making a celebrity look very beautiful, or I don't know, just having a cacophony of like people in the peanut gallery telling me how to take a photo. So, and being able to talk about my own work and what it is that I'm trying to say.
Okay, because sometimes I was wondering if you had issues with like your pictures being taken down, for example.
Um, no, not really, because most of the time I always censor them. I don't think I've ever had a picture taken down. I usually always censor them.
I get it.
Hmm.
How do you describe the relationship between the camera and your subjects?
The relationship between my camera and the subjects. Could you expand on that a little bit?
So, because something I've always, especially when naked, I've always wondered is if I were to be, if I were one of your models, let's say, and of course, you are the one behind the camera, and
Mhm.
there, probably would be as you said, many of your models friends or people you sort of know. So there is a trust uh,
Mhm.
relationship between me and you, but there's still the camera. And
Mhm.
even though you are sort of like comfortable with the person that's taking the picture, doesn't necessarily mean that you're completely comfortable with the camera, because it's still something
Mhm.
that uh, captures something about you, of you, uh, and mediates it.
Yeah.
And you're always wondering how you would look like, or how you're going to result, or how this camera is going to influences the perception of your own body. Of So there is some sort of, even though I'm your friend, for example, we've known each other for ages, and I know you take pictures, all of that, I would still feel like shit, that's the camera.
Yeah.
So I was wondering how, as a you obviously are a witness of this dynamic, because you're not
Mhm.
the camera and you're not the model either. So how would you describe this bond that sort of starts in a between the models and the camera, and if it stays the same? Because probably
Mm.
at the beginning of the shooting it would look in a certain way, and then by the end it's completely different. And maybe you can see that also through the pictures that you take. At the beginning the model looks in a way, and then probably gets more comfortable, maybe it gets completely uh I don't know, out of context, or afraid, or maybe insecure. So you would also see this whole change through the pictures, and I was wondering how would you describe this dynamic? Or
Typically I shoot with or photograph people that are going into the experience 100% sure, but even then, towards the beginning there's this like discomfort
Mhm.
um that I experience for them or witness from them, I guess, like as they're being viewed. And I think over the course of time, especially during shoots that are nude, I just don't even, I typically navigate them as if they're clothed, and that's just what I do. I think most of the people that are photographed nude, I've photographed them clothed before. So once they correlate the two experiences being similar, I think that they become less uncomfortable, or I hope to feel that way. And then I kind of try to just communicate with them from beginning to end that we can stop, or you have complete control over the shoe. um, I think sometimes um, it also takes a bit to get them to overcome the feeling that they have to perform for the camera, and that it's a performance, because it's not.
Mm.
Um, it's more so just about photographing their being. And I think it takes time and rapport to get to that place. Um, but eventually I tend to get there. There have been shoots that I felt like that just didn't happen.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's interesting.
Hmm. And typically I don't think I've used any images from shoots that have felt that way. And
Yeah.
yeah, I also try to follow up over time about how um, the person feels about the image now, years later, because it could be something that they don't want shared anymore.
Or don't recognize anymore. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I have to look at pictures of myself. I mean, I'm super young. I'm 23, so it doesn't 24.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever, so it doesn't really matter as much. But maybe when I was like 14, 15, 16, and I look at myself, I'm like, what happened here? Probably
Mm-hmm.
when I'll be 40, I will look pictures of me now, and I'm like, oh, who is she? Or maybe I can still see me in a
Mm-hmm.
couple of years. So and I think that the relationship between the subjects and the camera never truly ends, because there's always something that reminds you that that bond existed, which is the picture. And even
Mm-hmm.
though it has, like, I don't know, passed so many years, you would still feel the same way you felt in front of it.
Yeah.
That's why, and I feel like it's something that it's not really, I don't know, I don't want to say spoken about, but because people think that now because of selfies or anything related to social media, could be TikTok or anything, that we're always in front of a camera. This also just is, also this basic conversation is mediated through a camera,
Hmm.
but it doesn't mean that we feel comfortable.
Yeah. What you just said reminded me of a book that I actually finished last night. Do you know the writer Akweki Emezi?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I read their book, You Made a Fool of Death with Your Beauty. Have you read that one yet?
Yeah, of course. And they are the sister of or sibling, sorry, of another photographer actually.
And honestly, what I loved about that book so much was I was like, wow, this author, that this is an art hoe through and through. Like, I don't know if you know the term art hoe or have like experienced it or encountered it,
No,
but
no.
the way that they
Art
were
ho? That's
talking,
like art ho.
yes, art hoe.
Okay. No,
And
no.
I mean, it's kind of like a memeable term, but it's more so, oh, I'm a hoe and I just so happen to love art. And that was the girl in the book. She was a hoe and she just happened to love art. And I was like, wow, deep resonance. But there was something in particular that she said towards the end of the book when she was about to make a commission for the woman who had lost her daughter. I think her name was Joy. And the woman was like basically saying that what she was looking for within this commission that would capture her her daughter who had died was, I guess, more so just an archive of her existence. And the writer proceeds to say that that's what they think that a lot of people turn to art for, or in my opinion, turn to pictures as well for. And then
Mhm.
they expand further and call it an archive of madness. And I was like, ooh, I had to close my book and sit with myself for a second because it often feels like that. I think it can be almost maddening to see photos of yourself from ages and ages and ages ago and you look like a completely different person, but you know that that's still you. And I look forward to when the people that I photographed, that it's like 40 years from now and this is something that they have, that this is an archive of their existence and who they were 40 years prior. But what you had said just made me think of the book
Yeah.
that I finished last night.
Yeah. Well, they're great art, like writer. Amazing.
Mm-hmm.
All right, all right, all right. How do you describe? Okay, no, we said this. How did the story of your subject influence your creative process while shooting?
The story of my subjects, because I feel like I just photograph people from all across the board, but I think there are just aspects of people that I'm looking to have inform the project or inform the collection of pictures that I'm making, photographing mothers, photographing trans women, photographing rappers that are just incredibly raunchy um and just amazing, and photographing strippers who also live completely different lives outside of their professions and are, but also photographing them in a way that doesn't feel like they're performing for the
Mm,
camera.
exactly.
I think that's what I'm looking for. I think I'm just looking to get to the bottom of who people are.
Mm-hmm. So, um, do you usually? Okay, I asked this before, but the story of the model, does it influence the way you picture them? Not like metaphorically, but like actually picture, like the way you shoot them, or is it something that you want to allow the story, the picture to tell?
Um, I think it's more so something that I would like to have the photo to tell. And
Okay.
then, yeah, just more so have the photo to tell. or I guess in a way archive their words as so they can say who they are, and we not make the assumption.
I see. I see. Yeah, because you feel like even though you know them, there's still sort of a, I don't want to say prejudice, but the influence of your own perception that adds
Hmm.
up, right?
I
Yeah,
think, yeah, definitely. I think everyone has like
yeah,
these
exactly.
preconceived notions of who they expect someone to be, and they turn out completely different. Because while some of these people are my friends, there are also people that I've just like gone out on a whim and DM'd, or like I came across them on TikTok and had to do some major recon in order to find their Facebook and hit them up there and that type of thing.
Yeah.
But I think also through those methods, I've just made connections that I will cherish for life. So
Mm-hmm.
that's something that's really important to me.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, art has turned into a tool of awareness about political issues. Would you describe your art and vision politicized?
I think everything is rooted in politics and history, whether we like it or not. I think as I was making these portraits, a person that was heavy on my mind was Sarah Bartman. And I think while I was doing this project, I was like, or just making these pictures, I still am making these pictures. But while I was doing this, I was reading Wayward Lives and Beautiful Experiments by Sadia Hartman. And one thing that I love about her work and practice is how she essentially moves within the rhetoric or the ideology that history informs everything that we do, and
Mm-hmm.
that in order for us to learn from our history and know our history fully, sometimes we have to read between the lines. And while I was making this work, I also began an archive of my own that I've just been collecting pinup images of Black women on eBay for probably about 2 years now, and that collection's probably grossed like 200 negatives at this point. But as I was like doing this research, doing my reading, trying to figure out who these people are and what the stories of pinups were, I felt like I was still falling so short until I started, trying to fully read between the lines and looking closer at these pictures and looking at the ones where the women are holding up their driver's licenses to show their age and where they're from. And I think sometimes, with history, we don't have much else to go on than these preconceived ideas, but we have to learn or look at the bigger picture in order to properly assume.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's just something that I've been grappling with or just figuring out, just maybe just the way to properly assume, and allow history and politics in the world around us and the things that happened before us, how to allow them to inform my work and process.
Mm-hmm. Also, because I feel like history is something, as you said, you cannot really escape from it, and
Mm-mm.
it's an ongoing thing, and we cannot just turn our backs. And everything we do in the future is has something to do with the past.
Mhm.
Like also this whole idea of mythology and goes hand in hand with history. And
Mhm.
I know the story of Sarah Bartman also because um, I lived in Holland for 4 years, and she usually referred as Sarahche, which is the Dutch way of calling Sarah. Uh,
Mhm.
and the way she is known to us, or the way she has, the way history passed her down to us, um, a sort of yeah, mythological figure in a way.
Yeah. And I mean, that's something that even outside of this project that I've been thinking about as well. Like, how does lore inform the way that we see ourselves in the way that we navigate the world. And I think Sarah Bartman is just like the best depiction of how the world tends to interact with the sexuality of Black femmes. And yeah, that was just something that was, I guess, heavy on my heart as I was making these pictures and figuring out where I want them to live and who I want to have access to them or how I want people to receive them.
Yeah. Yeah. Um. Okay. What is, in your opinion, lacking in photography and or any other medium while displaying bodies, nudity, intimacy, and so on?
Mm, what do I think is missing? Honestly, I'm not entirely sure because I feel like the nudes and the photographs that depict people nude that I've been encountering, they've just been really honest and beautiful and done very tastefully. I think if anything, what I do or what I would expect more of is people allowing their sitters to be more involved in their process when it comes to after the fact, where we, I guess, like chat openly about where they feel most comfortable with these images living and, applying consent further than just you guys agreeing to take this picture
Yeah, of
together.
course.
It's, consenting to where you guys want them to live together. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So more of like consent that goes beyond the, do you want to take, like, do you're okay with the picture, but also consent in the way the story is told by the picture.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And people often say that nowadays we turn everything into a racial matter. Have you ever struggled to give the proper importance to race through a picture?
Absolutely not. Because I think race informs everything. And I think that, I don't know, I think that I would, personally, I just think that race is all up and through everything, and especially my work.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's also because maybe it's just my life growing up in the South, in the American South, or yeah, I think that's just my life. Um,
So, last question. What limits have you faced in your career and how did you manage to overcome them?
what limits? I would say for a bit, I felt like one of my biggest limitations was being an artist based in the South. I thought that I was gonna have to go to New York and like assist and be a photo assistant in order to gain and garner all these connections. But I just made a community that made sure that I didn't have to do those things. One that um, believed in my work enough to put me in front of these different editors so I could be in the virtual room where it happens. Um, I think the limitation now that I'm kind of like navigating is being an artist and a mother. I
Mm-hmm.
think there was a time in which someone, I would even say a white woman artist would have a kid and would disappear, and you wouldn't hear from them for a great deal of time. And I hadn't even known of any Black women artists that were having children and that were mothers for a while. Like I would, if I had to think off the top of my head, probably like Deb Willis. Um, I got to do some more deep thinking because it's very hard to like, I don't know, it's very hard to grasp. And so I'm now figuring out how to navigate that, navigate my career, find the time to prioritize my work, but also prioritize my kid. and bring him with me everywhere I go. And I think another thing that I was encountering was the issue with my age, and a lot of my peers being just way older than me and having a lot more experience. But I think also that wasn't something that was holding me back, because I learn still so much from them, and they give me so much advice on how to navigate my career and what to do next and where something should go. So yeah, that's my thoughts on that.
That was beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for the conversation.
Thank you. You asked some really great questions. I had to do some deep thinking and be amongst my thoughts outside.
Is it warm over there?
It is a bit. It's like 64. It feels good, but I'm about to be cold because I have a flight in 2 hours to New York.
Oh, fun's over.
The fun is over.